Everyone is asking the same question right now. After the dramatic events of Operation Absolute Resolve.
The capture of Maduro?
Exactly, the capture of Nicolás Maduro and securing Caracas.
Yeah.
And the stress, it's not just in Washington. You can feel it rattling markets, military commands all over the world. And the one question that keeps coming up is, does this start World War III?
It's the ultimate fear, isn't it? But, based on the classified intelligence analysis we've been looking at, the direct answer is no.
No.
Well, no, in the way we usually think of it. It's highly unlikely to be a nuclear exchange or a traditional kinetic, boots-on-the-ground conflict.
Thank God.
There's a big but. The analysis is very clear that this action in Venezuela, it starts something far more complicated.
That's a radical redefinition of global conflict.
Right.
So how quickly does this invisible war, as the documents call it, how quickly does it move from theory to reality?
Instantly. There's no delay. The briefing concludes that the immediate response from Moscow and Beijing will be this coordinated countermove.
Right.
But not on a traditional battlefield. It's a war fought through economics, through internal sabotage, and specifically through what they call cyber strangulation.
Cyber strangulation.
It's a war waged against the operating system of our entire society.
Okay, so let's unpack this for you, the listener. We have this unprecedented analysis, and it lays out the immediate fallout from securing Caracas. Our mission here in this deep dive is to walk you through this assessment.
To show what it really means.
Exactly. To show you what this victory in Venezuela means for the U.S.'s digital infrastructure and its strategic position in the Pacific. We're looking at two completely different flanks that are suddenly, and I mean dangerously, exposed.
It's the highest possible price tag you can attach to a tactical win.
Let's start with Russia. Their diplomatic reaction was, it was immediate and it was furious.
Oh.
Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, he called it piracy, and immediately warned of asymmetric measures. Now, we hear that phrase, asymmetric, thrown around constantly. What does that actually mean for someone just trying to run their business or, fill up their car?
That's the key question.
Is it just bluster or is it a real threat?
It is the defining threat of this whole situation because it defines the terms of what they call gray zone warfare. And we are now in it.
The gray zone.
Asymmetric warfare in this context, it just means Russia avoids any direct military fight where the U.S. has overwhelming strength. They know they can't win a naval battle in the Caribbean, so they don't even try.
So we fight somewhere else?
They choose to fight where they can inflict maximum economic pain and chaos, all while staying in this strategically ambiguous space.
So if they can't challenge the U.S. Navy on the water, they challenge the American economy online.
Exactly. They exploit a fundamental weakness of any modern connected society. And for you, the listener, this means the threat isn't troops landing on a beach. The threat is the lights going out in your city. It's the banking app on your phone freezing up. It's the price of gas suddenly skyrocketing because of a pipeline hack. The goal is to make the American public feel the cost of this operation directly.
Punish Washington by hurting the average person.
By creating profound day-to-day disruption. That's the strategy.
This sounds like a textbook case of avoiding that red line, right?
Yeah.
They want to stay just below the threshold that would trigger a full-scale NATO response.
That's precisely why the analysis calls it the gray zone. You inflict the pain of war, but without triggering a clear, conventional military response. Specifically, Article 5.
An attack on one is an attack on all.
Right. A cyber attack on the U.S. power grid is messy, it's deniable, it's devastating. But is it an act of war? Legally, that's incredibly ambiguous.
And that ambiguity is the weapon.
It's their greatest weapon.
And this is where the intelligence briefing gets really specific and frankly, pretty unnerving. It didn't just talk about asymmetric measures as a concept. It named names. It identified specific high-value targets here in the U.S. So what did the briefing say is now facing an immediate high-level threat?
The targets are chosen very carefully. They represent the hinges that American society swings on. And if you seize the hinges, the whole door comes crashing down.
Okay.
The analysis points to three key areas. First and foremost, the Eastern interconnection.
The power grid.
The main U.S. power grid for the eastern two-thirds of the country. A successful, sustained attack there would paralyze everything. Industry, daily life, communications, all of it.
And we're not talking about a blackout from a storm. If the grid is taken down by a hostile actor, the repair timeline is completely different, isn't it? How long could the lights stay out?
We're not talking about flipping a switch back on. The analysis notes that these kinds of attacks, they can cause physical damage to specialized equipment, things like transformers.
Which are hard to replace.
Extremely. They have very long lead times, sometimes up to a year. So you could be looking at weeks, maybe even months of deep, sustained disruption in major cities like New York or Chicago while you just try to source the parts.
That immediately freezes commerce. What were the other targets?
Second, financial data centers.
Yeah.
Just think about what happens if you suddenly lose access to internet banking or ATMs or stock market trading.
Even just credit card machines at the grocery store.
Right. It doesn't just halt the economy. It destroys public confidence in the system itself, which, is arguably much more damaging in the long run.
And the third?
And third, logistics pipelines. The analysis specifically pointed to the old colonial pipeline hack as a template.
The one that caused all the gas shortages in the Southeast.
Exactly. You hit those fuel pipelines, you create instant localized shortages that paralyzes trucking, cripples agriculture, and just shatters supply chains across the country.
So it's this targeted strategy of economic sabotage.
Yeah.
But to go back to that point about ambiguity, how do they do something that big like shutting down the Eastern interconnection and still have plausible deniability? Surely that's an act of war.
And this is where their denial strategy comes in. It's really the cornerstone of modern Russian gray zone doctrine. The briefing is clear. They are not expected to launch this from their official uniformed state cyber units. That would leave a clear fingerprint.
So they use proxies, groups that look like criminals.
Precisely. They outsource the damage. The source material names specific proxy groups, like Killnet and DarkSide.
We've heard those names.
And these aren't just, kids in a basement. They're sophisticated, sometimes ideologically aligned groups that often operate under the cover of being ransomware gangs.
And what's the strategic benefit of using a group like Killnet?
Well, they execute the damage and then they demand a ransom. It makes the whole event look like a massive, purely criminal act.
Ah, I see.
So the Kremlin can then step back, issue formal denials, and just muddy the waters so much that the international response gets tied up in knots. You can sanction a state, but how do you retaliate against a decentralized hacking group? It gives Moscow a lever.
A way to raise the cost of the U.S. victory without facing direct reprisal. So the bottom line is we achieve a huge objective in Caracas, but the immediate cost is accepting this profound digital vulnerability at home. We're facing a digital economic war waged by proxies.
That summarizes the Russian threat perfectly. It's internal chaos designed to make the price of victory unacceptable for the American public.
Okay, so if the Kremlin's move is all about inflicting internal pain, let's pivot to China. Their reaction, as detailed in the briefing, seems really different. It's less about chaos and more about protecting money and seizing an opportunity.
That's right. Politically, they came out swinging, demanded an emergency UN Security Council session, arguing the U.S. violated international sovereignty.
Standard political response.
Standard rhetoric, yes.
Yeah.
But the real driver here, according to the analysis, is the money and the strategic window that just opened up.
The money. Let's talk about the money. That's a huge factor.
It's colossal. Beijing has something like a $100 billion loan exposure to the Maduro regime.
$100 billion.
Mostly backed by oil deals. And China's great fear is that the new U.S.-led transition government will just declare that debt odious and default on it.
$100 billion is not a loss China can just write off. If the new government defaults, that's a fortune gone and a major loss of face. So they have a powerful incentive to either retaliate or, at the very least, distract Washington.
Precisely. And that financial motive leads directly to what might be the most critical strategic warning in the entire briefing. And it shifts our focus from cyber back to military strategy, the empty Pacific theory.
The empty Pacific. This is the classic dilemma for a global power, isn't it? You focus heavily on one intense operation, and the rest of the world sees an opportunity.
Because you can't be everywhere at once.
Right.
And that's exactly the warning military planners gave. The massive investment of resources, military, intelligence, logistics, all focused on the Caribbean for Operation Absolute Resolve, it creates a window of opportunity for rivals. And China is poised to exploit it.
Just how stretched are U.S. resources right now, according to the analysis?
The briefing notes that key naval assets, surveillance platforms, intelligence capabilities that are normally dedicated to the Pacific have been temporarily shifted or reprioritized to manage the fallout in the Caribbean.
So it creates a gap.
It creates a perceived and likely very real gap in resources, especially in those key maritime flashpoints in the Western Pacific.
And when we say maritime flashpoints, the analysis goes straight to Taiwan.
Yeah.
What's the specific fear there?
The fear is that a distracted U.S. administration, one whose bandwidth is consumed by managing cyber chaos at home and stabilizing a new government in Venezuela, is basically an open invitation for Beijing to test boundaries around the island.
To push the envelope.
To push it hard. Think about it. A crisis flares up near Taiwan, but Washington has simultaneously lost its financial systems, and half the Pacific Fleet is tied up in the Atlantic. Their ability to respond quickly or even issue a credible warning is severely compromised.
It's the perfect time for China to make a move.
A perfect time to increase naval drills, cross the median line in the strait, maybe even seize a small disputed island, knowing the U.S. is tied down.
What's so fascinating here is how these two threats are completely interconnected. The Russian cyber attack isn't just to punish the U.S., it dramatically enhances China's military advantage.
It's a force multiplier for Beijing.
Right.
Every minute the National Security Council spends dealing with the power grid is a minute they are not spending on deterrence in the Pacific. It's a textbook case of geopolitical synchronization.
So this deep dive into the intelligence briefing, it really boils down to two crucial immediate findings for us. One, Russia is targeting U.S. digital infrastructure to inflict economic sabotage. That's the internal threat. And two, China is simultaneously exploiting the military resource gap that creates, and that's the external threat.
The U.S. achieved its immediate goal in Caracas, but the intelligence community is screaming a warning that the price is leaving its digital and Pacific flanks dangerously exposed. And that exposure is the true nature of modern conflict.
And that completely shifts how we have to think about national security. The conclusion of this analysis really bears repeating. World War III, if it happens, it's not going to be the nuclear exchange we all feared. It's going to be this invisible war.
This calculated, persistent pressure.
Exactly. Cyber operations, economic destabilization, all designed to weaken your rivals without ever firing a shot in the traditional sense. We need to think about defense not just in terms of aircraft carriers, but in terms of firewalls and infrastructure resilience.
It forces a really hard calculus. We define victory in Caracas as capturing a regime, but the cost is national exposure on a scale we haven't seen before.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. If the true cost of securing a single regime change is the immediate exposure of your entire nation's critical infrastructure, and it creates a strategic vacuum that invites escalation in the Pacific, how do global powers even begin to calculate the true long-term cost of victory anymore? That's the calculation you need to be making.